right, guys, come on in here. Come on in here. It's your legal bestie, Attorney Simone, and we're going to talk about the bail hearing. So much has happened today. Let me know where you're joining from in the chat. So, this lipstick looks crazy. Anyway, I am, as you can see, I'm like at home. So, well, I'm on vacation with my family. So the timing of this was perfect. And if the internet's a little wonky, I apologize, but we're going to make it work. So as you know, today was the verdict. They all came to an agreement, all the jurors earlier today, and it was a split verdict. Remember, yesterday, the jurors came in and they said that they have agreements on counts 2 through 5, but they could not agree on the RICO count. And then when I heard their question, and I talked about this earlier this morning, if you didn't get to catch my verdict watch, that was fun. But I kept thinking about the question, the substantive question that the jurors asked on day one. And it was about distribution. And specifically what they said, the question was, if a friend asks me for drugs and I give it to her, is that distribution? Because remember, distribution is one of the underlying RICO acts. And then I remembered, y'all, when I sat there in that courtroom in closing arguments, and Maureen Comey went through RICO and what is required. She actually clarified that with RICO, remember, we had always talked about you need 2 underlying offenses. Well, she said you need 2 underlying offenses, but that it could be the same thing 2 times. And she gave these specific examples. She said, so if you feel that he has distributed substances 2 times, that is sufficient for you to find racketeering for RICO. And so when I heard the question from the jury, it dawned on me when I heard the question from the juror asking, wait a minute, so if my friend asks me for substances and I give it to her, is that distribution? First of all, Maureen Comey said, well, the answer is yes. And I thought, oh, hell. Oh, we're going to have a real problem with this jury. We're going to have a problem with what's called juror nullification, which we've talked about. But more specifically, the fact that they asked that specific question about the distribution made me realize that their concern is the jury is like, wait. This law just simply doesn't seem fair and doesn't seem reasonable. Because if you're telling us that if we find that Cassie 2 times asked Diddy for substances, and if he gave it to her 2 times after she asked for it, then that means RICO has been proven, then we got a problem. In other words, that means that it set it all up for jurors to have difficulty with RICO, but to come back and say, look, sometimes we call it like splitting hairs, splitting the baby. We're going to find him guilty of something. So they found him guilty of the Mann Act. And with the Mann Act, that is obviously transportation across state lines for Jane and for Cassie. And then I'm going to share the updates on that. I have this graphic up, y'all. Don't forget, watch CBS tonight, 9 p.m. tonight. I am going to be featured on the Diddy documentary done by CBS called The Verdict. I'm nervous as heck because I don't know. Y'all know I talk a lot. I say a whole bunch of stuff. So I don't know what's going to make it on the air. Hit that like and hit that subscribe as you come in. But we're changing up the share. All right. Now we're going to go back into this bail hearing. So earlier in the day, after the sentencing, Mark Agnifilo immediately asked for bail for his client, right? And the judge was immediately open to it. So I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting. Now, throughout the process, the judge has always seemed very fair. And at the end of the day, all the judge cares about is show me the case. In other words, show me the case law support. If you can find a case that says that what you want to do is valid and is how it's done under the law, he's fine with it. So immediately, Mark says, we want to put up $1 million bail. Please let him do basically be on bail, house arrest at either of his 3 mansions, New York, LA, or Florida. Comey said, oh, hell no. She said, oh, no, Your Honor. We are asking that this court deny bail. And she said, this man has just been convicted and we are seeking 20 years. Did y'all know that in the chat? Shake your astroglide. I don't know where my astroglide's at right now. They are seeking 20 years. They want 10 years for each count, and it is 2 counts. Now, I thought that sounded crazy and ridiculous of her, but hey, didn't nobody ask me. I think that sounded consistent. Here we go. Sorry, my ear. That sounded consistent with how the feds go super, super hard. And it was also sounding consistent with, remember, I had told you guys before. I said, even if he is only found guilty of the prostitution, the judge could choose to hand the book to him. The judge could choose to give him all 10 years for the prostitution alone. Now, Comey is going for 20. She wants to stack the 10 on top of each other. I'm going to tell you right now, it's unusual to stack on top. That's not normal. It can absolutely be done, but it's not the standard. But it would not be outside of the realm if this judge who heard all of that evidence decides that based on how he views Diddy to be a danger to the community, X, Y, or Z, that he would then go to the higher end, more of the 10 years. However, that's why this bail hearing was so important. So in this bail hearing, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share with you the update. In this hearing, basically, Diddy was in there, and when he was in there, multiple people got to speak with respect to why they wanted him to remain on bail. Because remember, Cassie's a victim. Jane is a victim. Cassie's lawyer came in there, Wigdor, the same one that got her the $30 million, 20 from Diddy, 10 from the hotel. And Cassie's lawyer, baby, came in there and said, told CNN, well, her lawyer then spoke with CNN, right? As well as the court, but with CNN, stated that this man is actually guilty of the trafficking and the racketeering, and that there was a lot of mixed emotions in the courtroom after the verdict. Now, specifically, he said, obviously, we would have liked to see the convictions on the RICO charges and the trafficking, but Cassie prompted this investigation by the Southern District, and now Sean Combs stands before the court as a convicted felon of 2 crimes. Hold on. We need to give Cassie her credit for that, because in closing, Mark frequently said, nobody called 911. Nobody called. All people did was call their lawyers. Listen, she needed to have a lawyer to get her to sit down with the cops for the cops to take her seriously because of the power of Diddy and the surrounding facts. Nonetheless, her lawyer added that while, quote, it's not the outcome they wanted, he and Ventura Cassie are grateful. Now, following up. So then, her lawyer then wanted to help stay to court and wanted to help make sure Diddy did not get bail, because for him to get bail would be like a slap in the face. The lawyer responded by saying that Mark Agnifilo, who very much characterized Cassie as a winner, that was insulting. Throughout closing, Mark characterized Cassie in ways that were insulting. You know, he would talk about how sexy she was, as though she couldn't be a victim and things like that. But her lawyer specifically spoke to the fact that she was considered, quote, a winner because she received money as a result of the abuse that she suffered. And Wigdor said he disagreed. She was not the winner, and that Cassie is not a winner, not today, at this point at all in the situation. He went on to then say she's really trying to look forward to the future, but he was specifically there to help support and ensure that there would be no bail today, because it would be a slap. It would be like basically saying, oh, Diddy, you're actually innocent, right? So fast forward. So the judge was basically sick of Mark Agnifilo, remember, the defense attorney. Because remember, throughout closing, Mark kept breaking the rules. He was saying completely impermissible things that actually worked. They worked. For example, like how he said, where are all the co-conspirators? Where are the you're not allowed to do that because the government gets to decide who they're going to call. Well, the judge was sick of him. And the judge told him, you full-throatedly, in other words, you bold-faced told the jury that there was violence. And now you're going to sit up here and be like, oh, no, Your Honor, it's not a big deal. Send him home. So the judge addressed him and says, quote, you full-throatedly in your closing argument told the jury that there was violence here and domestic V. And you said this is a case that did, in fact, involve violence. Agnifilo then responded that, oh, there's only been evidence of one instance of violence in 2018. And then there was a June 2024 altercation with Jane. What? Boy, what? With Cassie, there were clearly more than that. But yes, with Jane, there was just the one 2018. But there was multiple. And then Agnifilo also said that Combs, that he's entered a battered program. I told you guys, a batters program after the Continental Hotel surveillance footage was released in 2024. Y'all, as an attorney, we know what we're doing. He did that so that when they went to court, if he got found guilty, he would be able to put that in front of the judge so the judge would be more lenient. He also said that Jane helped Combs to write a letter to get into the program and that he is a man in the process of working on himself. Earlier this morning, I was on Don Lemon. And when I was on Don Lemon, I specifically said Diddy is going to come out and he's going to be like, he's working on himself and he's a good person, do all that type of stuff. Well, I want to show you this part, all right? So Inner City Press, I just love how he got straight to it. He said, they brought Combs in. They're waiting on the judge. The judge comes in. They had already submitted all their paperwork, their motion. Had to submit everything by 1. The judge took 4 hours. 5 o'clock was a hearing. Judge said, I read the submissions. The jury convicted the defendant of counts 3 and 5. And for these reasons, bail is denied. Woo! Bail is denied. It took like 15 minutes. He said, and then the judge said, even if the defendant, I'm gonna make sure you guys can see this. Hold on, make sure you see it. There you go. He says, even if the defendant was solely required to show that he is not a danger to the community, because you got to show more than that, he wouldn't still even meet that burden. Prior to trial, the court denied bail and sees no reason to reverse that now. The defense conceded the defendant's violence. I had to tell you, I was surprised at that. I'm going to tell you why. I was surprised at that because, remember, the main reason he was denied bail previously was supposed to be that he was tampering with witnesses and obstructing justice. Hit that like, guys. Hit that likes, please. We got under 400 likes. We need that likes. I need to make some money, y'all. New York's expensive. So he was denied bail because they said he was tampering with witnesses. Remember, Kalina, he called her over 154 times a week before she's supposed to meet with the federal prosecutors and things like that. But then he was found not guilty of tampering with the witnesses that were discussed in the trial. He was found, which is Jane and Mia. Note, the bail was denied based on allegedly tampering with the singer Kalina, but Kalina wasn't nowhere at court. Can he appeal the bail decision? He sure can. He can. That's my auntie. I love my auntie, but he sure can. But hold on, let me share this. I'll make it a little bit bigger. And I need to make that larger. Go back to this. So with the bail being not denied, here you go. Then the judge goes, it's important to know the temperament of the judge because y'all, this is going to help us predict or get an idea of how he might rule in sentencing. So he says, so basically Mark kept arguing. Agnifilo was like, hey, he was only found guilty of prostitution. Technically, prostitution is not a violent act, right? Because the prostitutes are consenting to the act. So he's claiming, he's not a danger to the community. He's not violent. But the judge is saying, listen, prior to trial, the court denied bail and sees no reason to reverse that now. In that the defense conceded the defendant's violence. The judge said his violence is depicted in the video of Cassie. The defense admitted this is a horrible moment. Domestic violence is the issue, is what he said. It wasn't only that. There was the London hotel incident. Y'all, that was one of the 3 incidents that the government listed as an act of sex trafficking because of the violence. It was also one of the 3 where the jurors asked for excerpts of testimony so that they could review the London hotel incident. That was the one where he whooped on a real bad. I believe that was with Daniel Phillips, the male hooker that was in the room that witnessed it. The judge says there was violence after the searches in this case. As to Jane, there was June 2024 violence after the searches of Combs' residences. The evidence Uh, this evidences a disregard for the law and a propensity for violence. See, when you are deciding things like bail, you can go on you can go on crimes that are not charged or be negative behaviors that they have not been found guilty of. We call it bad acts, prior bad acts. You can consider any of that because bail is all about supposed to be protecting the public. So I'm going to break this down for you and then I'm going to tell you my thoughts. It says this evidence is again a disregard for the law and propensity for violence. In other words, by the disregard for the law, you think you too big for your britches. You think that you really can just sit up there and do whatever you want all the way up until the time of your arrest. But what's interesting here is he says, as to Jane, there was a June 2024 incident. That was when Jane started it. I call it mutual combat. So according to the judge, though, the judge still feels that Diddy was out of line for how he fought back, fought her as well in that incident. And then the judge says, the court takes no position on what it will consider at sentencing, nor what sentence it will impose. In other words, don't take this to mean that it's going to give you any idea of the sentence, but here the burden is on him, Diddy, and he cannot carry it. The defense argues the guidelines for his crime start at 21 months, but the U.S. says it starts at 51 months, and he's already done 10 months. So the judge is saying, I am setting sentencing for Friday, October 3rd at 10 a.m. I'm willing to expedite it. They said, we want it expedited. We'll need an expedited pre-sentencing report from probation. I'll be available anytime. The judge said, there is a great divide on the sentencing guideline. I see that Ms. Comey and has her statute book open. And Ms. Comey's over there talking about something. Well, the rule requires the preparation of a report, absent a reasoned waiver. Probation may be able to expedite. The judge says, update me by July 8th at noon on when they're going to update the sentencing report. And then the judge says, and we will hold a hearing the afternoon of July 8th. Ooh, some of my friends that are still in the city. Y'all, I got to get ready. I'm going to Essence Festival. The hearing on the afternoon of July 8th, they're going to have a hearing regarding sentencing. It's not going to set the sentence, but it's going to basically set the timeline for each side to submit documents as to what they believe the sentencing guidelines should be that the judge should sentence within. And then the defense says, Your Honor has a lot of information from presiding over the trial. We want the sentencing done as soon as possible. Other Mann Act cases, there's nothing remotely similar to this. So here's what got me today. Earlier today, when Comey said, no, we want him kept in jail until sentencing, the judge says, and then the other side opposed it. The judge says, show me a case under the Mann Act where someone under the Mann Act was denied bail. And she was like, okay, I'm gonna work on it. She couldn't think of one off her head because she said she only knew of cases regarding kids. So here we go. The defense then says, well, the cases we're reviewed involve defendants making money or millions involving minors. That's different. Here are the facts from our letter. They got a little letter, blah, blah, blah. We got the letter. Basically, what they're saying is that he should be able to get bail because his prostitution didn't involve no kids. The defense also says, then there was a case, the Emperor's Club case of the former New York governor, and we understand that this is moving quickly. The issue for us, the defense says, is if we had more time, we could have shown the extraordinary circumstances that would warrant bail. That warrant bail. The judge ain't hearing it. The judge is like, no, you conceded that there was violence in your closing. Whether that's relevant to sentencing is not for today. We're not dealing with sentencing today, but it can be considered on a bail application. Defense says, well, in June of 2024, there was an argument that Mr. Combs was defending himself. Judge, Mr. Combs tried to get into a batterers program in New York. The jury never heard about that. And then he got arrested. All these months later, here we are, the same drive to meet head on, like the self-respecting businessman that he is. In other words, here we are. Basically, if he did this batterers program, Jury never heard about that. How come we're never hearing about that before now? Because that's something that the defense absolutely would have and should have brought out at trial, more than likely. And then the judge says, defense says, well, he's been a model prisoner. There have been no issues. He's going to have next chapters of his life. Well, of course he's a model prisoner. They keep him by himself. He ain't got no friends. He don't talk to nobody. Can't nobody beat him up, and he can't beat nobody up. It says there's been no issues. He's going to have next chapters of his life. When you're charged with racketeering, you have dark talks, he says. When I was reading the Mia message for his birthday, I had a hard time doing it. Agnifilo, what are you talking about? He's really just out there singing all of Diddy's praises. But, sir, he goes on to say, his children are here, Your Honor, his 2 daughters. There, in the middle of the second row, they no longer have a living mother. Here, the user of the prostitution services has been convicted under the Mann Act. He was acquitted of violence for trafficking, Your Honor. He says, he wants to talk to you. Let me check. Oh, shit. I didn't realize this part. Diddy wants to talk to him. The judge says, okay, check. Miss Comey, he wants to talk. Diddy wants to talk to the judge, y'all. Oh my gosh. Comey says his brazenness is almost unmatched. They suggest that it was the suggestion it was self-defense, and what he did to Jane is insulting. He slapped her in the shoulder. He had substances in his New York City hotel room. He invited Jane. And then the defense says, well, we could craft conditions, Your Honor. Would the court be open to us putting together a bail package? I'm happy to do so. The judge, the bail package is denied. We'll receive, hopefully, a joint proposal on an expedited sentencing on Tuesday and a hearing at 2 p.m. In other words, I'm sick of you. And then the court was adjourned. Bail was denied. So that's why the bail was denied. The bail was denied. In other words, and pull this off the screen. In other words, what the judge found is, okay, y'all listen to me clear. This is very important. The judge says, okay, I see what you did there, sir. Okay, I see that. You got out the trafficking and you got out of the RICO by yelling all this domestic violence. It's just domestic violence. And the judge said, oh, okay, you're not about to have your cake and eat it too in my court, not in this courthouse. So you want to get off of your other sentences, your life-facing sentences, by saying, oh, I was just a woman beater. Oh, okay, you going to be a woman beater? Cool. Sit in this jail cell. Sit it. Think about this, guys. How many people do you know, if you know anybody that's ever been to prison, gone to trial and gone to prison, where the person did not make their bail, right? They didn't have bail. They get convicted. And then after being convicted, but before sentencing, the judge says, okay, you can go home to your family. Go hang out, go kiss your babies. Go on home and then come back up here. So I can sentence you up to 20 years. Come on. Y'all have a good time. Never. That is a rich man's request. That is insane. Now, it would be different, guys. It would be different if he had already been out on bail. Like, you know how some people get arrested, immediately make bail. So you've been at your house for the last year where people are awaiting trial. That's one thing. Where then a judge may say, all right, I'm going to let you continue to stay out of jail, because you've not been in jail until sentencing. Happens all the time. But for you to be in there for a year, run around, acknowledge your violence, acknowledge your abuse of women, and then sit up there and be like, oh no, judge, it's not a big deal. It's just a bad act. It's just a bad act. Like, we're cool. Let me go home. I think that speaks volumes to the character of the judge. I was surprised. So I was surprised that bail was denied 3 times for the first go round. I have to say that. So then for this judge, and remember, it was denied by 2 or 3 different judges. But the judge stuck by it today and said, I'm going to make you eat your words. Was powerful. I said earlier, we're going to have to see how this bail hearing today is going to go to give us an idea of how he might sentence. I was concerned because the wording that he had earlier today at court was as though, when he told Comey, he was like, oh, I've never heard of a case where someone under the Mann Act wasn't given bail. I thought he was going to be like, slap on the wrist. But no, it sounds like what I predicted earlier, which was this. I had said at the beginning of this, in the event that he's only found guilty of the prostitution, the judge, having heard all the bad stuff that he did, right? Remember, the judge gets to decide which things the judge believes happened. The judge might very well feel, oh yeah, that man burnt up Kid Cudi car. The judge may feel that. The judge, I guarantee you 100%, the judge believes that $100,000 to the hotel was a bribe and that it wasn't for no confidentiality. Remember, it wasn't to preserve their media image. The judge, I don't think the judge was buying that. So in other words, the judge has heard all this bad evidence against him, and the judge can sentence him harsher on the Mann Act charges in light of his history of criminal behavior. The judge doesn't just have to be like, oh, this is prostitution, I'm only going to give you 2 years or a year or whatever. So yes, Diddy is facing 20 years. Let me put that. I'm so glad that you asked. Yes, Diddy is facing 20 years. That is correct. Yep. That was confirmed today by Comey in court. What do you guys feel about that number? And I'm telling you, I have seen this time and time again. Thank you so much for the super chats. I'm absolutely going to start answering those. I'm sorry, I was just a little bit on a roll. Let me tell you, I have seen time and time again on the federal system where someone would get off on what they feel they did, that they were guilty of. They get off on something, but they find this federal law and then find them guilty and then just give them a harsher sentence on the federal crime that they were found guilty of, if that makes sense. Who is doing the sentencing? Only the federal judge. In federal court, only the judge does the sentencing. That's how come the jury wasn't even allowed to know how much time he was facing. Only the judge in federal court does the sentencing. So this, I mean, absolutely. While it seems like a huge victory today, I'm saying, everybody hold your breath. Everybody should hold your breath. His family, hold your breath. Now, personally, I don't see the stacking of the two. I don't see the 20 years. But depending on how much the judge believes of all the crimes that were presented, right? Let me be clear. To be clear, the reason RICO and the S trafficking were necessary is because otherwise the statute of limitations would have expired for those underlying offenses. It had expired for the bribery. It expired for the arson. It expired for the hotel beatdown. So to be clear, in this case, RICO and S trafficking were necessary to extend that statute of limitations because without it, he wouldn't be able to be tried for any of this. Therefore, what I'm saying is the judge knows basically he got away with a number of offenses and the judge can choose to have a more severe punishment. Now, what I heard there in that discussion there is that the defense is going to create a sentencing basically package. So what happens is each side presents to the probation department basically some facts, some information. So for the defense, they are going to send a bunch of information on Diddy. They're going to talk about how, oh, he was addicted to substances and oh, how he's grieving the loss of Kim Porter and but that he's really not that bad of a person and he's a first-time offender and therefore they should do the low end of the sentencing guidelines. That low end, I want to say is the judge had said was around 21 months. Okay. 21 months on the low end. Keep this in mind. Whereas the government, and I have this here, the government is like, oh, hell no. We want 20 years. Again, but what happens is there's like a sentencing range. And that is what they are scheduling now is basically first probation does a deep dive into his whole life. Makes an assessment of how likely he is to commit other crimes. That's why him getting up there or his lawyers getting up there talking about, oh no, I just beat up on women. I just beat up on women. That's why that is significant. So probation is going to evaluate what is the likeliness that he will be violent in the future, that he will use drugs in the future, that he will break the law again, any of that. And I want to just put this back on here. And so what the government is saying, here it is. So right here it says, so Diddy's lawyers are trying to say that he should only be facing 21. The guidelines start at 21 months for him on the low end, but the U.S. is saying that the minimum is 51 months. He does get credit for the months that he's already done one by one. But what is 51 months? What's 51 months? Is that 6 years? 5 years. 5.5 years. So basically the minimum, according to the government, that Diddy would be facing, y'all, would be 5 years. Lord have mercy. I'm going to answer some of these super chats. Could y'all see this man doing 5 years in feds, in the federal prison? Remember, he does get to keep his coins because it's just taking hookers across state lines. He will not lose. It's not 51 years is the minimum. 51 months. Oh, thank you. 51 months is 4 years. Sorry. Thank you. He wasn't found guilty of trafficking, so why ask the question of registering as an offender? Probably because of the prostitution. I don't know. Some people may be confused about prostitution. Here, okay, I'm gonna answer some of these. All right, Will. Hey, Will. Baby oil and Astroglide sales were hopeful of skyrocketing again after those plummeting sales after the past 9.5 months. Denied. Good luck tonight. Thank you, Will. You are so crazy. That is so crazy. All right. We also have, here we are. It says, can you explain how he was guilty of the Mann Act charges, which can also be a predicate of RICO, but not RICO? I'm going to tell you right now. This is why when I opened up, all right, so when I found out that they agreed on counts 2 through 4, but were stuck on 1, that's when I realized it could not have been guilty of both trafficking and basically, I knew it wasn't guilty for all of them because, again, that would have been enough for RICO. So the reason that the jury was able to find him guilty of the 2 Mann Acts, which would have been sufficient for RICO, is that they likely decided based on that Jack-led description of, distribution being sharing drugs with friends. And if you share drugs with friends 2 times, I believe that the jury likely nullified. They said, that sounds so dumb that we're going to find that the qualifications for RICO haven't been met. So they likely said no enterprise or no conspiracy or no common goal. No enterprise, no conspiracy, no common goal. They basically just pulled at and said, we don't feel comfortable saying that anybody who 2 times gives substances to their friend has trafficked or in the same way. So therefore, that would be the only logic of how you get 2 of the Mann Acts, but it's still not good enough for the RICO. That means that other elements of the RICO, which must have been the structure, had to have been missing for all of the members of the jury, which is still very interesting because those receipts were no lie. When they poll the jury, I will be very interested in hearing whether or not they, when they heard Mark Agnifilo say, where were all the co-conspirators? Did that sit with them? Were they like so many people in the comments who are like, where are the co-conspirators? Thank you so much, Tracy. Cassie and her lawyers need to go away. This judge was unfair. Let this man go. These Indians think they are white. They not like us. Oh, wow. All right. Thank you for the super chat. Canberry, it says no bail because you were tricking on your girlfriends in different states. That is wild. The jury spoke and the judge is not listening. It's all politics. So here's the logistical problem, I guess I would say. The logistical problem there is that think about anybody who hadn't made bail, who had been sitting in jail for a year awaiting trial and then gets found guilty, does not get to go home. You are supposed to, stay in jail through sentencing. And let's say at sentencing, you get time served. Then you get to go home. But it's asinine to think that you've been in jail for a year and now you get to go home while you await a sentence, especially a sentence where this guy's own lawyers, Diddy's own lawyers, said the low end of the sentence will be 21 months. He's going to get credit for the 10 months, so that'd be 11 more months. In other words, just keep going. Keep coming. Keep coming. Keep coming. You're already in jail. You don't get to come out, have a little vacation, and check back in. Especially, y'all, where we know, remember, the feds, when they arrested him, he had pink cocaine in the room. He had all the freak off toys, which I don't care about now. But it was like he was all the way up into the last day breaking the law. Let's not act like he was raising his daughters. Oh, Cynthia says, I was shocked bail was denied too. I'm starting to believe they are just trying to get him because they can't legally, and I don't like our system used that way. Look, the government said in their closing statement that this man for 2 decades has been getting away with crimes, and it's time to hold him accountable. But there's a lot of people in America who feel that way. They feel like he got off shooting that lady in the face. He got off on a few things. It says, now this judge is always thinking, thank you so much, Tracy. This judge is always thinking about rulings, and every time it's against Diddy. The judge is sneaky and biased. This judge is going to give him the max. Tracy, I can't say that. I have seen so many instances in that courtroom where that judge has given Diddy's attorneys exactly what they wanted. I have actually seen where there was an objection, right? And it was overruled. So prosecution was arguing or doing something, and Diddy's people tried to overrule it. Specifically, there was a time, Capricorn Clark. This was so important to me. Capricorn Clark was testifying that she had to hire a lawyer to get wages that Diddy owed her and had not paid her. And then the government was trying to get her to say how much was the settlement because it was very relevant. And defense kept objecting. Now, first, the judge, I believe he overruled it. He said overruled. Then they go, let's have a sidebar. In the sidebar, whatever the defense said won him over. I have never seen a judge overrule an argument and then change his mind and be like, oh yeah, they can't talk about that. He would do that frequently. In addition, he would frequently they would object to certain testimony of witnesses. Like one of the witnesses says, like Capricorn said, she told Cassie, like, why would you be dating Kid Cudi? You're going to get us all killed. They objected. The judge didn't just say, yeah, okay, sustained. He also directed that the jury ignore that whole statement. And then at the request of the defense, like they redacted her entire statement from the transcript. That judge, I would not say he is at all biased against Diddy, but I think that judge is very much about the rules. And if that judge, let me put it better this way, if that judge feels like the jurors did what is juror nullification, meaning they know good and well the law says they're supposed to do this and that they chose not to do it, then he is going to implement what he believes is a more stringent punishment in the punishment phase, especially where 3 times in closing, he had to admonish Mark Agnifilo for saying and doing inappropriate things in the closing, including when Mark was like, the government is targeting my client. Judges don't like it when you try and taint the jury into thinking this guy isn't getting a fair trial. He definitely got a fair trial. So I say that to say, I could see this judge using whatever guidelines that he has to get more justice for the victims and to even consider in his mind some of the offenses that Diddy technically was found not guilty of. Now it says, thank you for your integrity with the law, regardless of the defense or the prosecution. Thank you so much, Ronnie. Leverage says the judge is going to make him pay. Yeah, I thought earlier maybe he would get time served, but I'm not seeing that because right now, at least the judge is saying, hey, if the minimum amount of time, according to Diddy's own team, is the minimum amount of time that he would have left would be 11 more months. under the guidelines. Oh, y'all. And that's assuming the two counts are not stacked on top of each other. Because it's 21 months. He's already done 10, right? Those 21 months can be stacked. It says the feds already said that they recommended 51 to 60 months. He will be home in less than 4 years with time served. And Trump may still pardon him because he hates Tommy's dad. Well, that's darn tootin'. Thank you, Shanice. Trump actually, especially now, given that the only thing that Diddy was convicted of was the hookers, I can absolutely see that happened. I don't even want to talk about that, but I do want to just clarify this. So no, it wasn't that the feds recommended 51 to 60 months. The feds said that is the bottom tier of the sentencing guidelines, and that there are aggravating factors that when they submit their written documentation to the judge, they're going to highlight those aggravating factors where they want the guidelines to be at the higher end, not the lower end. So just to confirm, so that was a text message or the tweet that I had put up. I actually had put up earlier was here. The guidelines, it says the defense argues the guidelines start at 21 months, but the U.S. says they start at 51. All right. And he's already done 10, so he get credit for that. All right, Mona, thank you for your awesome commentary. Appreciate you guys. Whew, y'all, we done had fun over here. Juror was paid off. They did not go back. They didn't. Hey, but let me tell you something. Can you blame them? Can you blame them? When those jurors sat up there and said, wait a minute. Do you mean to tell me I have to find this man to be a racketeer if 2 times he handed somebody drugs when they asked for him and that answer was yes? At that point, they see themselves in the law. They see themselves in the crime. They see a slippery slope is what it's called. And they see injustice. So when you're giving that type of interpretation of the law that feels so imbalanced, that's where you get situations like this where a person feels they can't follow the law. However, let's be clear. That was just one of the examples. You didn't have to find that he distributed substances. You could have said it was bribery. You could have said it was prostitution across state lines. So I'm totally with you. I am totally with you. Mama Doll, they are treating him like anyone else found guilty. That's right. He would have had to be out on a PR bond and released back out to self-surrender. No special treatment. Mm-hmm. You don't get out. If you are already in, you don't get to go out for being found guilty. That don't make sense. How much of the sentence does he have to do before he can be released? 100% or could it be less? For feds, I believe it's 80%. 80. What's not correct? Help me out. The judge cannot take into account crimes that he was acquitted of. I'm a practicing attorney and a former prosecutor. I also wrote the federal judge's sentencing memorandum. Okay, gotcha. So he cannot take into consideration crimes. Wait. Oh, no, I'm not saying crimes that he was acquitted of. But what I am saying, let me clarify this. So what I am saying is, for example, Comey, and we're talking about potentially how the judge could do a sentence. Comey had said that there was an incident with Jane when she was trying to argue to the judge that he's a danger, etc. She said there was an additional incident with Jane where he hurt Jane. She was getting into those facts. What I'm referring to is the fact that the judge can take into account all of the violent acts that are presented to him. And we know in sentencing, you're able to present some additional violent acts, criminal acts, risky behavior, and things like that. CB3, if you're still in the chat, feel free to correct me because I really appreciate you. But you're able to present violent acts, criminal acts, other acts like that. So I'm not focusing on the ones that he was acquitted of. But what I am saying, though, regarding the ones he was acquitted of, if the judge feels that this man is super dangerous because he's heard all of those things, he can choose to go to the higher end of the guidelines. And an additional way that that prosecutors generally show that someone's dangerous is that they will present uncharged crimes that have various forms of evidence. Maybe it was something he was suspected of or a variety of things, but feel free. I'm going to go back to the comments to see if you have anything to correct me on. I really appreciate that. Boxing for life. Sean Diddy Combs stood up and said himself that the judge is doing an excellent and great job. That is so true, Tracy. I love you, Simone. However, I don't feel Cassie is a victim. She had time to cheat with several other men. Her parents raised her on pretty and no brains. Yeah, I think they're just, listen, when the jury asked for those, got those transcripts at 1 p.m. and came back at 4 o'clock and were like, we got a verdict on 2 through 4, I was like, oh yeah, they didn't find no sex trafficking. They didn't find no trafficking, because that was not enough time for them to have truly gone through everything to get 12 people to agree. So I think a lot of other people saw it as you did. Shame on anyone praising him. Sipping Socialite says, shame on anybody praising him. Low life, poorly raised losers. Only wicked people support Diddy. Ooh. Okay. There you go. CB3. Okay. Thank you, CB3. CB3 said they understand what I'm saying now. Yeah. I'll never forget. There was this federal case. It was this federal case where this guy offed his dad, basically, for his mom. He got off on self-defense. But later there was some evidence that showed like it really wasn't self-defense or what have you. Then the guy, he lived in Canada. He was like traveling to Canada and traveling back. When he came back, the feds then got him, tried him on related charges, and got him sentenced to 20 years. So he got off on unaliving his dad because they claimed that it was self-defense. But additional evidence showed that he really did intentionally do it and it wasn't that. So federally, this is an Asian guy. I cannot remember the guy's names. So I say that to say, federal judges do not like it when you tout getting away with a crime and then you want to come up in front of them and be like, oh, give me some leniency. James, Canberra said James smashed his head and then lost the fight. Sure did. You can't do that. You gonna knock a man in the head, you better knock him all the way out. You better blow that, you gotta hit him to the white meat shows. Lovely says, I feel that they lost the jury with Jane and overly focusing on the actual parts versus proving the lack of consent. Diddy was pimping in reverse. You know, I have to say though, it was going to be a hard sell. So I'll kind of conclude with this. The trafficking was going to be a hard sell simply because the entire case had a number of offenses that we're all familiar with, right? Kidnapping, arson, where you have an idea, like if you're sitting on a jury, you have an idea of what those crimes would look like. And nothing in this case looked like those traditional crimes. Nothing. The kidnapping looked like a corporate kidnapping. The arson was fine, but although there wasn't that much connection to Diddy. Then you had the forced labor. You know, the forced labor, we think of people that are forced to work in a nail shop or a massage parlor. Not what we saw with Mia. And then the trafficking here being a girlfriend, being two girlfriends. Now, it would be different if one of the women at least was not a girlfriend, but the trafficking was all girlfriends across the board. I think the challenge was the defense did a really good job of creating a theme of, you know, of the government is overreaching, the government is doing too much. And then when they get into the deliberation room and they ask the judge, hey, if my friend asks me for some drugs and I give it to them, is that distribution? And they're basically told yes, then it sounds just like overreaching and doing too much under the law. And therefore, it sounds like those jurors did not feel comfortable applying the law to the facts in such a situation where they couldn't necessarily see the intentional conduct, the knowing conduct, those types of things. So I hope that helps. Jim Jam said, effed up situation, but it's what you can prove. It is. And it's how they didn't do a good job storytelling on the prosecution, persuasive storytelling. You know, when you're telling a story about somebody who's been assaulted, somebody who's been hurt, you really, it could be 5 years for each count. You really want the jury to empathize and feel bad for your victims. Now, that was the case on direct with Cassie, but when it switched over to cross, they really lost that. And I don't think anybody ever felt any of those jurors. Oh, sorry, for Jane. So the 5 years is, it can be, yeah, it's 5 for each count. It can be stacked, but usually they run concurrent. Could they seize his plane? No, not for the hookers. Well, possibly, I guess, if, yeah, he had the ladies on the plane. That could be. Bullet point the facts and stay on track. The judge has always allowed both sides, but he is giving him 20 years. Ooh, M. Simpson. Is R. Kelly is doing time. Why not Diddy? Ooh. His house, chef, and family were getting ready to party. Speaking of the chef, y'all. Why didn't we see the chef in this case? I really want to know. I thought she was going to help prove up forced labor. It was, I don't want to say her name because I don't want, I know life is hard enough. I don't want her to get any negative impact. I follow her. I think she's great. But literally, I sat in the courtroom and they said, later this week, the witnesses will be so-and-so and so, and they named her. So I was shocked that we did not see her. I hope they do a documentary on all of this. Oh, don't forget, guys, my documentary airs tonight at 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to be in the Diddy documentary on CBS. It's called Diddy, the Verdict. And you can watch it on streaming on CBS News 24/7, or you can go to your local CBS. All right. It says Agnifilo had to go hard like that. Yep. It was a perfect defense. What other tactics would not have worked? Any other tactics would not have worked. That's right. All he had to do was find one person to say, I'm not going to follow the rules because these rules are dumb. Hey, my love. Oh, my family. No, you're great. Come on in. Yep, I'm wrapping up. Come on in. This is your house. So, guys, all right, drop your questions below. Let me know what else you want to cover. I have to cover the dismissal of the Jay-Z case against Tony Busby. This is my family. We're doing the holidays for the 4th of July. Hope you guys are doing great. It's your legal bestie, Attorney Simone. Hit that subscribe, hit that like. If you send me a super chat, I really appreciate it. I can buy some more panties. Bye, y'all. Shake that Astroglide on your way out, because I can't wait to see what happens with the sentencing. I do not think it's going to be the slap and the wrist that he's expecting. I don't think it's going to be the 21 months that he's hoping for, minus the 10 months he's already done. So let's see. Bye.